Jeff Hafley joins us. He's a Boston College coach, and it's very likely that for the second year in a row, BC will have a player taken in the first round. Coach, good afternoon. It was great to see you again. We saw you last year in Vegas, and I know you're proud of yet another player about to head out, the wide receiver, Zay Flowers. Good afternoon.
Hey Paul, how you doing? Appreciate having me on again. 2 years in a row, get a chance to have a first round pick. So we're certainly excited about Zay tonight.
I know there are a lot of important aspects of making a program work, but when you're in the national eye, as you were a year ago in Vegas and tonight in Kansas City, what does it do for your program, and what potentially impact can it have down the road?
Well, one, I think it shows our team. If you stick around like Zay did and you don't leave and you don't get enticed by money or, anything else that there is in this NIL transfer portal world, that great things can happen, just like they're going to happen for Zay tonight. I think it helps with recruiting. I think it shows you that we can develop players. Obviously Zion last year and now Zay, and I think there's a chance we have another first round pick with our offensive lineman next year. That we can build this thing the right way, develop really good players, and ultimately over time, we're gonna have a really good football team.
Coach, I remember talking to you about that last year, and you had some very strong comments about where we were in college athletics, especially the portal, the problems there, NIL. I'm sensing, and I feel pretty confident that not much has changed on that front. So take us through your thought process and what goes on and what has to happen, if anything, to make the situation better.
Well, yeah, I do. I remember talking to you about this last year. It was last year at this time my phone started to ring from Zay. Pretty ironic now that I'm here getting ready for him to be drafted tonight. But he was getting calls, and I remember in the draft last year stepping aside to talk to him a few times actually, and he wanted to stay, and we were fortunate. But it was the tampering that was really the most upsetting to me. I think us as college coaches, I think that's really bad for our game. People reaching out to players on other rosters that aren't in the portal. I understand the portal, I do, and I think there's a time and a place for players to leave who want to leave, need to leave, or feel like they needed a better situation. And I also understand NIL. There just needs to be regulations right now because I'm sure you've heard the stories, and I'm sure every coach has them. I mean, it is really the Wild West where we're all waiting for Sunday to be over when the portal closes. And I think hopefully this will correct itself fairly soon, though I'm really not sure that's going to happen.
Coach, in a situation like this, you know what is going on. Your information is ideal. You're in a situation where what do you do if you don't want to? I don't think just go public and say, "Hey, Coach X is tampering with my player." Is there some protocol, or is there simply nothing that can be done?
Well, I think I've talked to a bunch of people last year. I got a bunch of phone calls because, the story went quite public. I think Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers were two of the biggest stories last year, around this time of potentially leaving. Two of the better players. One won the Blitnikoff, and now here they are both ready for the draft. One transferred, one stayed. So I did talk to people. I talked to the NCAA. I just think we're at a point right now where all of us coaches are, who do we talk to? And what is it getting done for us? So I'm focusing my energy, Paul, on trying to connect with my players. I've spent right after the spring game, I spent a week and a half meeting with every player on my roster, which usually after the spring game is just a time of celebration and getting ready for the off season and recruiting and summer plans and training camp. And now it's spending time connecting with your players on a daily basis to make sure that your own team is intact. And what's really hard about that is you go through a whole off season, you go through winter workouts, then you go through spring ball. And especially at a place like BC, you're trying to build a culture, a really strong culture. That's how it's going to be here. And then you get to the end of spring and you got to figure out if you have the same team going in the training camp. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy to me, but it is right now what it is, and we all have to make the best of it.
Coach, when you sit down with certain players, and you're right. I mean, you're Zay and I mean the Addison stories. I've heard probably a few more about them because they involved some schools that we cover a lot. But they were scary, and they're quickly forgotten about. But when you sit down with your players, what are those conversations like compared to maybe 2 or 3 years ago?
Well, some of them are very honest. Some will sit in my office and say, "Hey, coach, this school reached out to my dad, or this school reached out to my high school coach." And I mean, for me, it's, I talk about the degree at Boston College because it's a life-changing degree. I talk about the relationships that we've made, which is why right now, Paul, it's so important. I mean, especially in my role, I need to connect with the players. I need to spend so much time with our players, and become really tight with them where they feel comfortable to come to me and tell me the truth. And then I try to show them why they should stay and how we can develop them and how their team is relying on them. We were young last year. 37 of the 44 in our 2 deep were first or second year players. So I think these young guys have a tight bond. They've played together. They enjoy playing together. And I think, that's how we're going to keep our players here. And that's what I have to spend the most of my time doing. But yeah, those conversations are, there's some tough ones, but usually when they come to me and they start talking, I know they want to stay. I think it's the guys that don't say anything, that all of a sudden you hear it from somebody else. Those are the guys that are going to leave.
I know you can only be concerned about your program, and I'm not trying to drag you into a story across the country, but you have a program out west right now where the majority of the team has essentially been shown the door. On one level, it's a terrible look for college athletics. On the other side, is it or is it not the reality of where we are and how the rules are designed?
I mean, those are the rules right now. And certain people choose to build their programs different ways. Some want to do it through recruiting and develop those players. And hopefully, by that time, their fourth and fifth year players is really good. And that's what you and I talked about last year. We're going to win at BC as we get these players older and we develop them, but we got to keep them. And that's the hard part right now. And that's exactly my message to you was last year. But there's other ways to do it, and people have had success. And hey, if the rules are what they are, and that's the path that certain coaches want to take, they have every right to do that. For me to give my opinion on that, I don't think I need to go down that road right now.
I understand what you're saying about the importance of a degree, especially one from Boston College, which is a traditionally rich school, academics, athletics, just the whole concept in the New England corridor of what that means. But when you move into the parlance of athletics, how frustrating, I think I know the answer to this, and difficult is it when you're trying to sell something in relation to what you're supposed to be going to college for, while other people are essentially selling roster positions?
Yeah, and I think that's where we have to be different, and I think that's where we need to find the right fit. I've had plenty of kids sit in my office, with their parents, and the first question that they ask, if it's about NIL, it's probably not the right fit for Boston College. If the first question is about academics, internships, football development, life after football, developing into a man, then we have a chance. And what I've learned over the last year and a half, those are the kids that we have to go after. And those are the kids that are going to stay here. And then what we need to do here, Paul, we need to develop them. And I've hired a good staff of football coaches with a lot of NFL backgrounds who can teach and develop. And it's about fundamentals and technique. And that's how we're going to win here, and that's how we're going to do it. And there's no other way because I'm not going to win the NIL game. It's not going to happen, and I'm not going to try to do it. And I'm not going to entice recruits right now to come here for NIL money. We have an NIL, we have a collective, and we're going to take care of our players who are playing well and doing the right things, and we're going to do it by the letter of the law, BC, like we're going to do everything else. But that's where we are right now, and I'm confident we can continue to build. The hard part again is going to be people coming from the outside and trying to rip us apart. And that's to me the biggest struggle right now. It's the transfer portal meets NIL, and it's a complete storm. I think if we had the transfer portal and there was an NIL, no problem. I think if we had NIL and there was no transfer portal, no problem. The two colliding is a complete disaster.
There's a new NCAA president. I'm sure you're very familiar with Charlie Baker. In terms of what he can do in how he's intersecting with Congress, what's your level of optimism that some of these problems can be fixed?
I've spoken to him briefly. He swung by the building maybe a month ago. He knows it's going to be a lot of work, but he seemed fairly optimistic. I think it's going to take time, and that's really the only thing. It's not changing in the near future. I don't see it, but he was optimistic that over time, hopefully, we can fix this thing. I think it's also up to us coaches to try the best we can to do it the right way. Unfortunately, um, winning is important too. So there's some guys that are going to do winning at all costs, and whatever they have to do, they're going to do. And I respect and understand that as well, Paul.
Jeff Hafley, the coach of Boston College, a year ago, I came away impressed and hopeful for you, and I'm doubling down on that today. Coach, I don't know how you survive in this deep ocean, but I hope you do, and we look forward to chatting again.
We'll survive, Paul. We'll be on next year with another first round pick. We're going to have a really good season. I feel great about the team. And next year, hopefully, we're talking and it's still not about the same thing.
I hope so. All the best, Coach. We're pulling for you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Great. Wow. I walked out of that conversation last year in Vegas with Coach, and I thought, I hope he makes it. I don't know how he can, and I say that not with anything to do with his coaching ability, which he has plenty. He's got a great track record, except trying to fight the Sharks out there at a school like Boston College are extremely difficult. We will take a break. We have more to come right after this.